Knowledge for Men Podcast, Episode 2.
Welcome to KnowledgeForMen.com, interviewing the most successful and inspiring people to give you real-world advice to rise above the odds, live a life of purpose, reach your full potential, and become the man you were born to be. And now, your host, Andrew Farabee.
All right, guys, welcome to the show. I have a very special somebody here for you today. Ross Jeffries. He's the founder, creator, and master teacher of the worldwide seduction community. Featured as the mentor to Neil Strauss in the best-selling book The Game, Ross Jeffries has taught, coached, and mentored thousands of men around the world since 1991, guiding them to the success with women they truly desire and deserve. Ross, I'm happy to have you on the show.
It's always a pleasure to share my life-changing teachings and information with those who I know are going to benefit greatly from listening today.
All right, go ahead and kickstart the show with a favorite success quote that you've lived by.
If you want results that are different from the results you're used to having, then you have to turn to ways of thinking, feeling, and believing that they're different than the ones you are used to doing.
I like it. Do you have another?
A good quote would be, what you resist persists, but what you dwell on, you create hell on. I like that one too.
Ross, I like the quotes and thanks for sharing. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
What do I do? Well, I do a lot of things. I'm a teacher. I'm a healer. A lot of people don't know about the healing aspect of my work, but I've studied a lot of different healing modalities. A lot of men come to learn in this endeavor of life are dragging a lot of pain, a lot of limiting beliefs, a lot of dwelling upon mistakes. So a big part of my job is knowing how to very, very quickly get people past that. So it's a big portion of what I do. I do private consults, personal coaching, and I'm also creating some courses in persuasion. But what I love doing most is pushing the envelope, is saying what's an even better way to help guys heal, to step past what they thought was possible, and to discover things that go way outside of what they thought they could enjoy. That's my real enjoyment. Teaching men to pick up women, get women in bed is relatively, hear what I'm saying, relatively trivial compared to the power and the passion I have for getting people past their blocks and limitations. That's the really cool stuff to me.
I like that a lot, Ross. I think so many guys are really, they have these mental blocks that are really holding them from being successful, not only with women, but just in life in general. And when you overcome those mental blocks, everything else just seems to fall into place. And now, can you go ahead and share with us a little bit about how you got started with what you do?
I got started when I was a child, in the sense that I was taught to think outside the box. I was told by my parents that I was smart enough to do anything. And I always had the idea since I was a young child that I would grow up to make an impact on the world, that I would be famous or like a great person. How I got into it is I had a terrible history of feeling very bad about myself when it came to women. I could not get a date. I didn't lose my virginity till I was nearly 22 years old, and I had already gone through all those years of college at UCLA. I like to use the metaphor water everywhere, but not one drop to drink, because that's what it felt like. And that went on for a long period of time through my 20s. And then I stumbled onto NLP, and I immediately thought, this is something that can be used very, very powerfully. Now, there was no, and still isn't, other than what I've created, any kind of seduction model for NLP. But I figured I've got to figure that out. I'm going to be the one who figures out how to use NLP for confidence with women and seduction, which is what I've done. And that's basically, it started from a lot of pain, but also a tremendous amount of resiliency. I've had many people say, how did you come up with this? And I just said, I have an incredible aversion to quitting. I just cannot stand the thought of quitting. I just would not quit. I honestly think I'm one of the 3 or 4 most incredibly resilient people out there. And if you add that into being very motivated and super brilliant, and not modest, and someone who has always thought that he's going to be famous and change the world, then you've got me.
Ross, I think there's so many men out there that could relate with that experience with not being good with women into their 20s and into their 30s. And you talked about not losing your virginity until age 22. I think there's a lot of guys out there that are feeling that. And, I'm glad that pain, brought you forward and pushed you forward so that you can become better. But if we could take a step back, and are there any failures or challenges that you had to overcome to get to where you are today?
In retrospect, I don't like to define things as success or failure, but I mean, since I was from the time I was in high school all the way into my very late 20s, I was having these challenges and difficulties with women. Okay. So it was a period of time. I was the person who never had a girlfriend. I would show up for family gatherings without a girlfriend, and, family started wondering, am I gay? There's nothing wrong with that. And it was very, very painful. During the formative years when people are learning about relationship and bonding and what it means to become vulnerable to the other sex, I wasn't doing any of that. And I want to say, this is a big piece that men don't like to admit. We can talk about getting laid and we can talk about sex, and that's all great. But, knowing how to be vulnerable with women, knowing how to admit that to ourselves, and also staying how we would define strong, is a very, very difficult skill set. And if we don't have a social group that encourages us, or a father or some other male role model, then it becomes very, very difficult. And a lot of this, I think, has to do with that we didn't have fathers, or we had abusive fathers, or that sort of thing. So I sort of take the mentorship and the healing part, again, very, very seriously. I joke around and I talk quick and I'm very flippant. One of my heroes as a child was Muhammad Ali. And I would watch Ali. You sucker, I'm the greatest, you're nothing. I'm going to get Joe Frazier. He's just a gorilla. I'm going to pound him in Manila. I can take on that persona. It's a lot of fun. But I don't joke around at all when it comes to the healing part of the work. I said this, I made an appearance at a Neil Strauss event. I said, isn't it ironic? We work on ourselves as guys. We tweak ourselves. We try to get better jobs. We invest in improving ourselves, also that we can have the experience in losing ourselves in a woman who's just so wonderful, she blows our minds. And where you see that kind of paradox is an opportunity for people to really encounter courage and wisdom. Courage and wisdom, not fake confidence, not strutting around with some, I'm going to have to say it, mystery method bravado, but having the real courage to say to yourself, this is uncomfortable, I'm a little scared. I'm going to take the choice, make the choice to do it anyway. And I think part of this real appeal is when you can walk through the world and not need a guarantee, when you can walk through discomfort and not let it rattle you. This is and put a sense of fun, put a sense of playfulness and fun around it. Then you've got something going. And that's far more important to me to teach than language patterns. I love. I still love the language patterns. That's great. It's exciting to me. I will always do it. But what I've just been talking about 45 seconds ago, to me, you can find that's more intriguing.
Okay. Can we talk about what are some of these barriers that men need to overcome? What's really holding guys back from, interacting with women the way that they want to? And how can they just jump out of their shell and be?
The ability to be aware of the flow of feel. I didn't say feelings or emotions. I mean the raw sensations in the body, and to put your own meaning on it. Just because you're feeling anxious in the body doesn't mean there's any information there about whether you're going to succeed or fail. For all you know, the woman is the one with the approach anxiety because she wants you to approach her and she's anxious, you won't. So the fact that you're feeling anxiety doesn't give you any information that makes for a credible story. One of the things I teach guys to do is to be aware of that flow of feel in the body and don't give it the meaning that says, oh, I'm about to fail, I should run away. I look at things very differently. One of my orientations is NLP, and NLP says watch what we call things and instead turn them into flows of activity and process. Now, let me unpack that and illustrate that for you. I've had many students say I do well with the 7 or 8s, but the 9s and 10s I just don't do well with. I'm sure you've heard this before.
Yes, I'm definitely familiar. Go ahead.
And what I pointed out to a student recently is, have you ever considered there's no such thing as a 7 or a 9 or a 10? There's only the level of sexual excitement you feel in your body. It's that there's a flow of excitement and anxiety in your body that on a scale of 1 to 10, you rate as a 10. So as soon as I stopped making it about being a thing out there called the 10 and pointed his attention to the process going on in his body, he began to have a choice about what to do with it. But, if you can't see it, then you can't make contact with it. If you can't make contact with it, you have no input or control. And our language can either free us by turning us to look for a process, or it can freeze us by looking at things. That girl is a 10. I don't have a thing called confidence. I have a thing called approach anxiety. So this orientation of looking for process and activity is something that I learned in NLP, but it's also reinforced in my meditation practice. And this is one of the things that makes me a different kind of teacher, because I'm not just teaching behavior or what to say. I'm teaching a radically different way of looking at the world, all of the world, looking for activity rather than thing. This is a primary understanding of NLP and what they call transformational grammar.
I think that's what really separates you from the other trainers, is you're helping these guys become better people overall.
I hope as guys listen to this, they can see, first of all, that it can be surprising to hear me. I'm not the obnoxious, jump around, arrogant guy that I play. I can switch into that. Sucker, I want you to know. What retards. I can get into that, but I don't think that's what people are here for.
Exactly. That's what it's all about. It's about helping guys become better people, helping guys break through their barriers to become better with, health, wealth, relationships, and personal growth as a whole. It's about becoming a better person.
One way to do that is to stop seeing something as a thing called the barrier, and instead look at the activity and the structure and the process that really comprise that, quote, barrier. The barrier is not a thing. The minute we start looking for things, we start losing contact with the process and the activity that's actually going on.
Okay, thanks for sharing. I now want to jump into the system that you created called Speed Seduction. I want the audience to better understand what it is and how it can help benefit them in the future.
There are 3 or 4 pieces to Speed Seduction. So picture a table with 3 or 4 legs. The first part is, as I say, a profoundly different model of looking at people, not just women, but looking at yourself, how you create your emotions and your states, and then looking at how women create their emotions and states. So it's a profoundly different way of thinking, perceiving, and looking at the reality of human subjective experience. So that's the first thing. It's the mindset and the premises and the perceptions that I teach as being a math. I don't teach it as being science. I do teach it as a predictive math. So that's the first part. The second part are the techniques for building your state, and most importantly, learning from your mistakes. In an area of life that's very deeply emotionally challenging, that you've had a lot of frustration through, it's very easy to look at what you do and just bring up all that pain and all that frustration and look at what you did through that. So you don't give yourself credit or even notice what you did right. For many guys, this is what happened. And what I'll say is, in an area of life that's been profoundly challenging, emotionally, cognitively, whatever, when you go to make changes, that stuff is going to come up. If you're not prepared for it or don't know what to do with it, it's like walking down the street where you've been mugged 10 times before, and number 11, the mugger jumps out again, and he always takes you by surprise. So a big piece of what I teach, and another pillar, are the tools of personal transformation, and especially a really good learning strategy. Creating the right states for yourself and having a really good learning strategy. So you learn from everything. If you go out, it doesn't quite work out, rather than being frustrated for 3 weeks or 3 months, within 24 hours, you're back there totally confident that you've learned your lesson. The third piece are the language patterns, what we use to capture and lead a woman's imagination and emotions. It may have seemed right prior to hearing this that I was discounting that. I'm not. The language patterns are significantly powerful. We tend to structure our reality around our language. So if you know how to use language in a powerful way, you can do some pretty awesome things to open a woman's imagination and emotions.
Interesting. Can you give us some examples of some of those language patterns?
Sure. Well, I would say that it's not important as you listen to me that you go inside and find inside your mind all those things, or even some of the most exciting things that you would like to experience most with the women in your life, or the women you imagine, or the women you've seen. Before you do that, I just want to let you know that there are many, many different applications and tools. And one of the byproducts of Speed Seduction is that these become powerfully available to you right at your fingertips. So as you're thinking about that right now, I'm not sure exactly what comes to mind, but just be aware that this is an example of using language that leads your imagination, because I didn't say anything specific. So speaking vaguely is one way to do it. Also, speaking about topics that tend to open up a woman's imagination and emotions. Very, very, very profoundly powerful. But I just gave one. As I was saying that, as I was going through that long bit of wordplay, I know it seems like I was saying something of substance, but in fact I wasn't. If you go back and listen, or even transcribe this, you'll see I didn't say anything specific about what you want to experience with women. I didn't say specifically what you'll find exciting in what I'm teaching. So you have to go into your imagination and fill in the blanks.
Okay, so speaking openly and vaguely just kind of lets the imagination go wild, and it kind of helps spark that emotion.
I also threw in many embedded commands and suggestions that you didn't catch.
Can you break some of that down for us?
But I use presuppositions like before and as while that's happening and that sort of thing. But there are also certain formats, for example, jokes, games, quizzes, those sort of things that act as a sort of a Trojan horse inside of which you can embed lots of sexual metaphor, sexual ambiguities, that sort of thing. And I teach men also how to touch in a way that gets women sexually aroused. And they seem like innocent touches. They're not.
What are some examples of those touches?
Back of the neck is a good one. The small of the back is another one. I even have rubbed a woman's thumb, and she said to me, "Is that supposed to be going between my legs? Because that's going right between my legs." So it's also about intention and energy. But I can give you an example of a language pattern that's the form of the game. I call it the twin brothers game. I say, "Okay, Debbie, I heard this at a party. Let's see if you're the kind of person who likes to learn about yourself and have fun at the same time." Well, that's setting up a challenge frame. What woman is going to say no to that? So I'll say you meet twin brothers at a party or some place where you really want to get with someone. You hear the suggestion? You really want to get with someone? I'll do this just so you can see it. I wouldn't do that in the real world. So you meet these twin brothers, some place where you feel comfortable realizing you really want to get with someone new. Hear the command, feel comfortable. You really want to get with someone new. There's a suggestion. Each of them looks just like the kind of guy where you look and you feel to yourself, damn. See what I'm doing there? You look, I'm drawing a picture frame, you feel to yourself, damn. One of them, an incredibly good dancer. The other one has the most amazing, pleasurable, skilled hands that you can imagine. Which one do you feel a really, really strong attraction for, Debbie? You hear the command, feel a really, really strong suggestion? Then no matter what she tells me, I'm going to develop the answer. Let's say she says dancer. I'll say, really? Tell me more about that. Like, what is it about it when someone is a good dancer that lets you begin to think in a certain way? You understand? Begin to think in a certain way. What is that suggesting? So I just play on her responses. So it's dance. Let's say she says hands. I'll say, I agree. It's really, really important to me that I'm with someone that they touch me in all the ways you really want to be touched. You hear it? And then I'll reach out and touch her. Like I had this friend in college. I don't know if it's true, but he said that he can get a woman really, really excited just by touching right here in the back of the neck. And then I'll do one of those. You understand? This is how it's in the form of a game or a quiz. And it's pulling out her attention and then putting things back in and sort of shoving it back into her mind.
So you're giving her scenarios and opening up her mind.
And she has to participate and give answers.
And her emotions are going up all the while.
Right. And it's in the format of something that's non-threatening. It's a game or a quiz.
I like that. I'll have to try that next time. Sounds like a lot of fun. Ross, let's get down to the question that I know that everybody listening to wants to know. And it's this. What do women want from men?
The better question is, what do women actually respond to? Talking about what women want leads to endless speculation. And there's no exit from that loop. I'm more interested in what do women actually respond to in the ways we want them to respond. That's a far more interesting question because it's an empirical question. It's a question that directs us towards looking at behavior rather than listening to ratcheta. Now, I've said this for years. I started saying this on talk shows in 1990. There's what women say they want. There's what women think they want. There's what women want you to hear, and then there's what women actually respond to. The last category is all that matters. So let's break it down to certain levels. First of all, I think women respond to challenge. Women respond to challenge and someone who keeps them guessing just a little bit, someone for whom they have to work for. So women respond to challenge. Second, women respond to having their imagination and their emotions stimulated. Number three, women respond to, I hate to use a sloppy piece of technical vocabulary because I tend to think very precisely. But women respond, for lack of better or worse of a term, to vibe. I think there are four vibes that women respond to. Number one is being commanding, having a strong outward direct presence. Commanding, dominant, pick your term, being a leader. Number two, women respond to someone who fascinates them and who evokes their curiosity. and who also demonstrates that he understands them. Number 3, and these are not in any actual order. It's not like you do one first and then the other. Number 3, women respond to fun and playfulness. Someone who could create fun out of nothing, out of thin air. And number 4, they respond to someone who's being authentic in the moment without apology. If I'm angry, I'm angry. If I'm happy, I'm happy. If I feel I love her, then I love her. I tell her. This is being authentic. It's exposing who you are. Now, I'm not saying you have to do this with regard for proper boundaries. You know, if you're seeing a therapist, nothing wrong with that. I've done it in my life. You don't tell someone that immediately. It's being vulnerable within proper boundaries. So if you're pissed off, you don't hide it. You tell her, hey, that pissed me off. Don't ever do that again. I would like you to do this instead. The challenge that guys have is their personalities are overdeveloped. You ever see someone in the gym who only works out his arms, but he's got stick legs? For many guys, they're very good at being devoted. They don't know how to be dominant, or they're not comfortable with it, or they haven't mocked up or created sufficient internal representations that they have a map to follow. So I think having that kind of choice to create different aspects of the personality challenges women in a positive way. When she doesn't know what kind of pleasure you're going to give her or what pleasurable aspect of your personality is going to come next, then she'll try to figure you out. And figuring you out works you even deeper into her mind and her heart. Many people say to me, well, don't women respond to status? Don't women respond to money and power? And yeah, of course they do. Sure. That's absolutely true. But if you're not going into the fight with that, you need something else. If you're 6'10", 350 pounds of solid muscle, you don't need to do a lot to win a bar fight. You just hit the guy once or fall on top of him. If you're 5'3", 135 pounds, you need something else. By the way, you know who was like 5'3", 5'4", 130 pounds tops and could have killed that 6'10" guy?
Who?
Bruce Lee. Okay, so you need something more now. But when you can show up this way, there's one more skill I'll say that I think is very powerful that women respond to. And that is a guy who can see where she's at without having to go there for himself emotionally. One of the problems with so-called nice guys is they're not just sympathetic, they're empathic. They feel what their women feel. So if a woman is suddenly feeling anxious about getting sexual, the nice guy takes on that anxiety for himself, and there goes his sexual agenda, there goes his intent, right out the window, and she becomes the emotional leader. So in between the extremes of being the nice guy, who is totally overtaken by what the woman feels, and the jerk-off who doesn't even notice what the woman is feeling, I say you can be the kind of grounded, solid human who's also flexible enough to see where your woman's at, listen to me, without having to go there. Doesn't mean you can't if you choose to, but you have the choice not to. And a guy who shows up with that kind of skill is got something going.
Thanks, Ross. That was really good advice. I'm sure the audience can really take a lot of that and put it into use today. Can you touch more on the key words and commands used to arouse women?
You wrap those inside of a format and theme that women find interesting.
And you do this by opening up her mind with the words?
Well, the theme and the format of twin brothers and being attracted to men, that's a theme. The theme of being attracted and how you experience it, that's something of great interest to women. And the format, that it's in the form of a quiz or a game where she's going to learn something about herself, is also very appealing. So you take a theme and a format, you get her talking, and you use what she says and also the format and the theme to embed commands and suggestions and also set anchors. So let's say in the course of that conversation, when you ask her what that would feel like to be with a guy who has all those things, she goes, oh, and she puts her hand on her chest and looks upwards and bites her lip and makes that sound. That's her own personal anchor for those feelings. So later on in the evening, I can pick up my drink and go, this juice is so good, and drink it down. You understand? Now I'm taking all of her positive feelings and I'm drinking them.
Okay, so you're setting up anchors for some of those emotions that the girl's feeling in her imagination. Now, I want to talk about attraction. How do you build it? Is this what women are looking for?
Well, what do you mean by attraction? What is going on inside of a woman that would let you know you, quote, got attraction? This is one of the differences between me and the community. They're still using language in a sloppy way. They're talking about attraction as if it's a thing. And it's ill-defined. How would you know? How are you going to know if you've got attraction? What do you mean? Usually, I think what they mean is, okay, you've got her attention. She's interested in the conversation, but it's ill-defined. You're saying the way you defined it meant arousal, and you use it by using these commands, progressively sexualizing the vibe and the conversation and the intent. That's how you do it. But understand, it's an important point, because if you're aiming for arousal, but instead people are teaching you to get attraction, then you've got a technical problem. This is my problem with the community. Attraction. I've got attraction through demonstrating higher value. Well, attraction as observed how? As defined by what? Higher value than whom? Measured in what units? By whom? It's very, very sloppy thinking. And because it's so sloppy, it's actually difficult to get any handle on it and to actualize it.
Yeah, okay, I get it. It's not real. It's ill-defined. I want to ask you, what are the correct mindsets to have when approaching women?
First of all, that you're interested in the woman, but you're invested in your skills. In a breakfast of bacon and eggs, the pig is invested, the chicken is interested. So yeah, you're interested in the woman, but you're invested in getting the skills, which means it's whatever she says or does, it's a stepping stone, not a stumbling block, if you know how to process it and learn from it. That's number one. The second attitude is, I seldom take a woman's first response to me as written in stone. It's almost always just a reflection of what she's thinking, feeling, or believing in that moment, and almost always subject to change. Number three, I would say that no matter what happens, the worst that can happen is nothing will happen. No matter what happens, the worst that can happen is nothing will happen. Meaning that I've been doing this a long time, thousands and thousands of women. I've been yelled at maybe twice, kicked out of a place once, and physically attacked once. That's out of thousands and thousands of women. If they're, most of the time, when it does turn up that they're not interested, they just ignore me, or you'll just be ignored. They won't say anything. They won't do anything. They won't respond. So what?
Okay, in that moment of rejection, do you keep going? Do you persist? Or do you just take the abundance mindset and realize there's a lot of women?
It all depends on how much fun I'm having. If it will absolutely ruin her day, if I continue, then I'll continue. There's no better feeling than knowing you're having fun ruining someone else's day. But generally speaking, I bail. So what? Listen to me. I had an incredible lesson in pickup and seduction the day I watched my father die. I was with my father when he passed on. I loved my dad a lot. I was with him when he died. And after he died, he was still warm. I touched the shell of his body. I thought, oh my God, I'm looking at the shell of my father's body. I never even formed that concept in my mind, what to say, being prepared for it. But, when he took his last breath, it was over. It's done. And I'm saying to all of you, one of these days, it's going to be done. You will take your last breath. Your mouth will be open. Someone will close your mouth, and it's done. You're not going to get any more time. Compared to all other events are pretty insignificant. Who cares if some chick even kicks you in the balls? This is it. This is not a dress rehearsal. This is your life. You can make a choice to have a life that's extraordinary, or you can be mediocre because I need to know I'm going to get the result. Sooner or later, we're all going to go. Sooner or later, that woman you approach, who you think of as being something more than human because she's got you so turned on, or rather you haven't yet learned to control the level to which you're feeling turned on, she's going to die too. If she's lucky, she won't age too bad. I watch my mother shrivel up like a prune and get demented. So, not to be a downer on your day or your weekend or wherever you're hearing this, but come on, seriously. Who cares if some chick doesn't like you or doesn't return your call? Get some perspective.
Ross, that was so deep what you just shared with us. And, there's really a big lesson there. We live once, and we can't let these little things prevent us from taking action for the things that we want in our lives. You have to take action. You have to realize that this is the only life that you have, and you got to make the most of it. And moving forward, I wanted to ask, what are the 4 Bs? I've heard so much about these. What are the infamous 4 Bs?
5B. This is what most guys rely upon to be, or they think will work with women. Bullying, begging, buying, bullshit, booze, and there's a 6th one, biceps. Okay? These are the kind of darts that we throw at the wall hoping to hit the target because it's what we've been taught by the media. You know, my yoga teacher, I've been very fortunate to have great teachers. My yoga teacher, Mark Whitwell, said, look, it's one thing to want to be connected to a woman, but look out for this game that the social mind. Our social mind has been programmed since we're like 3 years old to play this game of who wants me? Does anyone want me here? I need to be wanted. And he said that's a tool of the social mind to keep people anxious and nervous. It's one thing to long for that organic connection to a woman, but this whole thing of, you know, being needed to be wanted is something to be avoided and to be aware that when you're coming from that.
Okay, so this is what's preventing guys from being successful with women. What else can they do?
You know, one of the things to say is be different enough to capture attention, but not so different you creep them out. Now, in the beginning, I tend to learn at the extremes. I take the absolute extreme of the envelope and then work my way more into the moderate, more into the center. I learn best at extremes. So in the beginning, you may creep some people out, but hey, if you want to fertilize an egg, you've got to crack a few comfort zones.
That's funny. When you're doing boot camps with guys, what does that process look like? Or are you still doing boot camps?
I've cut back my seminars to two seminars a year because really what I want to do is the personal coaching.
Got it.
People come out for a weekend privately with me, or I do things by Skype. If you're curious about what my coaching is like, just email me, ross@seduction.com.
That's awesome. What are some of the interesting things that you've learned about how women think?
The primary difference, I think women are just as sexual as we are. And the big difference that I think I've observed, and remember, this is a map. It's not science. It's not truth. It's a map. I think it's a good map, but it's incomplete, and it certainly is subject to error. The big difference, I would say, other than the plumbing and the social pressures, is this. We men are just as emotional as women, but we have our emotions in order. When we're angry, we're angry. When we're happy, we're happy. When we're horny, we're horny. Women can have emotions about their emotions. So a woman could be turned on, and she could feel anxious about her being turned on. Then she can feel curious about her being anxious about her being turned on. Then she can feel excited again about being turned on. Do you understand? Women have emotions about their emotions. Women's emotions are recursive, and they reflect on each other. And if we don't understand this, then what appears to be, here's the trick. The same behaviors women give us when they're not interested look a lot like the behaviors when they are interested, but they're just having emotions about that interest. If we learn to step back or know how to more subtly direct the emotions about her emotions, then we're okay. So if we're not aware of this, it may look like failure to us, when in reality, she just needs to have some emotions about her emotions. This is what I think makes women look crazy and emotionally unstable, because one minute they may appear one way and the next the other. It's not that that first emotion isn't there. It's being modified by the emotion that's reflecting on it. But we tend to be more linear in our processing, women, and more results-oriented. Women tend to be, and again, I'm generalizing, that's why I'm saying tend, more often than not tend to get into these loops where they have emotions about their emotions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Does that seem like an accurate insight?
It
From
does.
someone who you really want to learn more with, don't you?
Yes.
Yes.
Ross, I wanted to dive into what a good program would be for a guy who's just starting out. Like, how often should he go out? How many girls should he be talking to? And what should he be doing when he goes out? And his mindset. If you can share some of that with the audience, that would be great.
So it depends on someone's lifestyle. I don't know. I've had people, I was at a mystery method thing, and I spotted someone who was one of my students who's a doctor with a very, very busy practice. And mystery said to him, you need to quit your practice for at least 9 months and go out every night. Depends on what your other values are in your life, what your lifestyle is, what else you have on your plate, your obligations. If you're married, if you're a single dad with 2 kids, you have a different situation. I would say, if you can, devote 2 days or 2 nights a week to it. And how you see results depends on your skill set going in, how quickly you can learn from your mistakes. This is a big one, having a really good learning strategy so you don't dwell on mistakes, but immediately see what you can do different is a huge piece of the difference between people who struggle for years and people who get it fairly quickly.
Okay, so going out as much as you can, just as much as possible, creating a good learning strategy is going to be the best for most guys. And Ross, from being in the industry for over 25 years, what are some of the biggest challenges that you see that's preventing guys from being successful with women?
Well, they're doing repetitive behavior. They're doing what they've always done. They're trapped in ways of thinking that don't work. They don't even see what I call operating system errors. One of the operating system errors is they're looking at their new possibilities through the pain and limitations of their past. So they don't even know that they're distorting their sense of possibility. Number two, they're dwelling on mistakes. I've said to guys, how many times have you thought through how you fucked it up with the particular woman? 1,000 times, 5,000 times. They're dwelling on mistakes in an effort to fix it. But what you dwell upon is what you're programming back in. So it's not a big mystery to me. That's not a pun intended. How they're staying stuck, not why. People are stuck, it's not because they are a thing called a loser or a thing who has a thing called low self-esteem. It's simply the processes and the subroutines they're running don't work for them. The third thing I would say is another operating system error is for every 1 point of action they take in the field, they have 1,000 points of dissecting it. Their action to thought ratio is way, way off.
I think that's such a huge sticking point right there for so many guys out there is they're thinking way too much. They're not taking enough action. You need to take more action than you're thinking and reading. Go ahead. What else you got for us?
The next thing I would say is their personality is out of balance. They know how to be friendly and devoted, but they've got the dominant part off. And then the next thing is they don't know how to get a woman talking about the right subjects. They don't know how to notice when they're getting really good, strong unconscious responses that they can draw out and play with and link to them. The big one is they take a woman's first response as written in stone. They take the challenge out of it too. Those are the big ones.
Ross, I definitely agree. There's so many sticking points there. And, so many guys are really just caught up in asking 21 questions. It's like they already have a script of how the conversation should go. And if it doesn't go that way, they're out of the loop and they don't know how to react and they're not really present to the moment. So they can't just have a natural conversation. Thanks so much for sharing, Ross. And now, Ross, we've entered my favorite part of the show. I hope you're ready.
Welcome to the Knowledge Round, where the guest will be asked rapid-fire questions to give the audience invaluable pieces of wisdom to help transform their lives. Starting in 3, 2, 1. Showtime!
How would you explain the seduction community to a newcomer?
Seduction isn't a thing. It's a process and an activity. Every process and activity that you want to activate in a woman so she feels liking you is in there anyway. Just a matter of bringing it out through how you capture her attention, how you get her talking, and what you do with the responses she gives you.
What is the number one thing that's holding back men from being successful with women?
Their old ways of thinking, feeling, and believing are automatically coming up and getting in the way of their new perceptions, actions, beliefs, and ways of moving through the world.
I like that. How can guys avoid being in the friend zone?
Rather than thinking about avoiding something, think about where you want to go. Thinking about avoiding something, just put your attention right back on it, and that's where you'll go.
I like it. Ross, what's the best advice you've ever received from a mentor?
Here's the advice. No self, no problem. Flow self, no problem. That's spelled N-O. No self, no problem. Flow self, no problem. And the teacher is Shinzen Young, the greatest teacher I've ever met in my life. And I've studied with Bandler, and I've studied with this guy and that guy. Shinzen makes them all look like dwarves.
I will definitely have to check out Shinzen Young. And on to the next question. What are your 3 favorite books and why?
Breakthrough Pain by Shinzen Young, because it was the first book I ever read by Shinzen that totally opened my mind to his genius. Prometheus Rising by Robert Anton Wilson, who's one of the most original thinkers and who influenced how I think tremendously. And then the other one, there's a lot of ones for third place. Monsters and Magical Sticks by Stephen Heller, because it taught me a completely different way of looking at trance and the experience of hypnosis in everyday life. But I want to just for a second come back to Shinzen, because Shinzen's work has done more to transform who I am and how I move through the world than all the work of NLP. I'm not putting NLP down. It's extraordinarily powerful. NLP never made me one bit wiser or one bit really more compassionate, because that's not what it's designed to do. Shinzen and the meditation practice he's taught me and that I do, hopefully has got me started in that direction.
I like it. And on to the next question, getting deep here. If you had to write your obituary, what would it say?
Every time you exhale, you're writing your obituary. And every time you inhale, you're writing your birth certificate. And in between the inhale and the exhale, and also, if reincarnation is true, this is the afterlife.
Ross, where do you see the direction of the seduction community going into the future?
I call it a metastasis, a tumor, a cancer that should be excised and irradiated out of existence. I hate it.
Thank you for sharing. I want to move on to the next question. In the last 25 years that you've been a dating and seduction coach, what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned?
What they've taught me is if you're going to be a great teacher, you have to have appropriate compassion. You have to see people as humans, and you have to be incredibly flexible and versatile in what you're going to bring to the table. You have to be able to enter their world and then bring them over into a different kind of reality. And that a true teacher doesn't just convey facts or entertain. A true teacher can open up doors in consciousness, close those doors that aren't useful, and truly get people to see their world in such a shocking new way. They can never, consciousness, craving, aversion, and unconsciousness affect all of us. And if you're going to be brilliant, you have to combine it with being wise and compassionate and being very present in your body. That's what I've learned. And I've learned this. It's very painful to be rejected a lot, but it's extraordinarily dangerous to be looked up to and adulated and worshipped by people. People who come to events, 50% of the time it's because secretly they want to be told what to do. They want to surrender their identity to someone. And so you have to, if you're not really clear and clean around that, getting that will destroy you. I've seen it destroy people and take already semi-unbalanced people and driven them over the edge into madness. I can name some former students of mine who became teachers, and as soon as they got the adulation and the admiration of the students, it destroyed them mentally and emotionally. So if you're a teacher or wanting to be a teacher, be very, very, very aware of the dangers of being looked up to and worshipped and adulated. Do everything you can to push that away. Push it away and do everything you can to build your students' trust in their own ability to think and to think in new ways. Because otherwise you're not truly a teacher. You're a leech, a vampire, a locust. The good thing about these people in the community who are teaching is they're so ineffective. If they were any more effective, they'd really be able to suck people dry.
Those are some great lessons. Ross, as we're coming to a close, can you give the audience some parting piece of guidance?
Yes. Every time you inhale, you write your birth certificate. Every time you exhale, you write your obituary. And in between the inhale and the exhale is where true freedom is found.
Ross, thank you so much for being a part of the show. You've given us a lot of valuable wisdom that the audience can put into use today. Again, thank you. If you want to go ahead and leave a plug for yourself so the audience can reach you in the future.
There's two ways to find out more about my work. One is to go to seduction.com and sign up for the free newsletter and or get my flagship course, Rapid and Total Success with Women. If you want to speak to me about the opportunities to study with me privately, either through private coaching on Skype or coming out to see me for a couple of days. Some guys actually come out for 5 days a week. Just email ross@seduction.com. ross@seduction.com, subject matter private coaching, and we'll get back to you. Remember, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Your hands can't hit what your eyes can't see.
All right, Ross Jeffries, everybody. Thank you so much for being on this show. You have instilled valuable and priceless wisdom to the audience today. And for that, I thank you. For all the listeners out there, if you like what we're doing, you like what Ross has done on the show, and you'd like to see more of that, then please leave us a review on the iTunes. Again, leave us a review so more people can experience this wisdom. More people can learn. More guys can grow. And that's what we're all about, is helping guys live better. And we can impact more people with your help if you can leave us a review on the iTunes. And if you could just share this blog post or share this podcast with your friends. Also, visit knowledgeformen.com to view blog posts, view articles. Some of these articles have gone viral with over 200,000 views in less than just 1 month. So we've got some really good content on the website, knowledgeformen.com. Until next time, guys, have a great day. Crush life.
Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast show. Now go crush the day, live better, take action, and get the life you've always dreamed of.